I don't think I've recorded from the car for a few weeks, so I'm going to do one today. So where was I? Now, I've been kind of trying to think, don't know, speak today, trying to think of what I wanted to sort of talk about this week in the history of my career. I was going to talk about my favourite language, and as a kind of preview to that one, it'll be probably C++, but that's for a future talk. I think today I'm going to talk about, so I think where I talked about last time, the company, what not to do, how to kind of look for the best company as opposed to jump into, the kind of the sales pitch that they give you. I'm on to the next company. So after I got made redundant from the previous company I talked about, I went to work for a bigger company. Funny enough, I got made redundant from this company after a few years because it was the early 2000s and things started to go a bit downhill, shall we say, in the early 2000s in regards to finances and companies. But when I first started work for this company, the group that I worked in was actually a company that was bought by this larger company. And what they did, they actually produced a SMS server service, whatever you want to, server service, that was used by quite a few major mobile companies at that time. Now, I can't remember because a lot of them changed their names over the time. Cellnet, I think maybe one of them, I can't remember all of them, but anyway, it was basically, this is even before video, image messaging. It was just literally text messaging. 140 characters was it back then? I can't remember now. It's been such a long time since it's changed, and no one even remembers these things these days. But yeah, they produced this SMS service server, and which they sold to large mobile providers. And then what they did then was they provided a development service to create applications that plugged into this. So, as an example, one of the first things I worked on, and I believe I worked on the C code because there was sort of some HTML code for the front end, and I worked on the C code. But basically, it was a competition system. So, in today, you kind of get these competitions where they say send your name and the A or B or whatever as your answer. It was basically one of those. I don't know if it was the first one or one of the first ones out there. And literally, what you did is you used the back end to basically just get the answer to kind of work out if the right answer is put in, because I can't remember the full details, but you put in the information, you put in which was the correct answer, etc. And then what would happen is the competition would go online, however they sort of forwarded it, whether it be web page, radio, whatever, and let's say send your answer A, B, or A, B, C, D, or whatever they wanted in there. Basically, the text message would come in, and then it would go into this system, and then it would say, is it, for example, if your answer was A, is it A in the text message? And if it is, then it put the details of the person that sent it in a list, a file, and then that at the end would go in. And I'm not quite sure how they drew the winner from that point, because I don't remember us having any kind of randomized winner pick. It was literally just a service, a system that kind of allowed them to basically send in a message to a particular mobile number, and then that mobile number was linked to this competition server that then plugged into the SMS. So the SMS would come in on a number. This number was linked via the SMS service to this competition server, and then it would read the message from the SMS, and then it would serve a SMSC, I think they were called, small message service or service, wherever it stood for anyway, acronyms. And then it would literally come in, and it would go in that log file. So is this right answer? Yes. And back then, it was quite an interesting thing, actually, and that wasn't the only thing I did there, but that was the very first thing. I went on later to work on one of the 4G services that were a part of the 4G service, one of the first ones that were in Japan. But anyway, this small system and a few more that I worked on were really interesting because it allowed me to get an understanding of how small systems and services plugged into this other server via UDP and things like TCP. Because I can't remember. I think this one used TCP, and then one of the systems after this, I worked when we were talking about the 4G one, used UDP because it was just fire and forget. Anyway, so yeah, that was kind of the next thing I did. It was quite an interesting time back then because everything was all based on CLI. You didn't have nice UIs. The GUI was written in HTML and literally didn't even connect into the back end system. It actually had its own CGI. Was it C? I can't remember. No, it was bare C code that was written that basically took the information from the web page and wrote it into the part of the service that needed the information. It's been 24, maybe even 25 years ago, so some of the information's a bit vague now, it's long forgot. But yeah, that was sort of the next thing I did, and it was quite an interesting time, as I say, because it wasn't as regulated as it is now, so you could have a bit of fun when you were coding, and there was a few kind of hacked bits, shall we say, in a lot of the services that are out there. Yeah, so great times. But I think I'll talk more about the other things I did after this with this company in the next video if I don't talk about my favourite language. So hopefully you'll check in on that one and see you next week. Bye for now.